Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Zachary Shuman. I'm interviewing David Hochstettler. Start at the beginning.
Okay.
When did you arrive at Yavapai College?
Okay.
And how did you get here?
I came to work here in 1972. I had just finished my PhD at Syracuse and in English. And at that time, the bottom dropped out of the market for English PhDs around the country. And so interviews were hard to come by, although I had a few, and they might have panned out. But we had lived in Arizona before, in Phoenix. I taught at Alhambra High School, and I'd heard about this little community college that was opening in Prescott that most people didn't know about. And so I just sent a blind letter asking if there was an English job. And they didn't know how to advertise at the time. And so they didn't have any applicants, but they had an English job. And so I came, and I was hired. And I brought with me a brochure that I'd made of my wife teaching kindergarten kids. And she was teaching some real little hard cases in Syracuse. They were ghetto kids, real hard lives, violent, just a real tough background. And she just loved them into learning. And wow. So we took a lot of pictures and made up a brochure, and I took it over to the public school superintendent's office and showed it to him. And the assistant superintendent was actually doing the hiring. He said he'd never done this before, but he was going to hire this person sight unseen. And so I went home with 2 jobs from that trip. And from Syracuse, why Arizona looks really good. It's dark and snowy and rainy, and we really want to get back to the West. And so this was a big opportunity for us. So that's how I came.
I know I've got a little background on you. I know you've ended up doing a whole lot here other than English teaching. And
yeah.
So how did that progress? How did you end up staying here so long?
Well, a few months into the job, I became English department chairman by default. I was the junior member of the department, and so they made me be the chairman. And after another year, sort of the same way, I got to be chairman of the liberal arts division. And in that role, I had a lot of direct contact with the dean of instruction. And I decided I could do that job better than he could. And so after a couple years, he became the president. And I thought, well, what the heck? So I applied. And all the qualified candidates turned the job down. And so they were left with me. And that job, the title mainly changed, and I became academic vice president and then the vice president until '83 or so. So there was about a 10-year period there, 8 or 10 years, when I was chief academic officer, at which time I thought I wanted to be college president. And the closer I got to that being a reality, the less attractive it was. I decided that I was more interested in education than in public relations. And a college president is a public relations person. That's what he does. And I wanted to be closer to the learning process than that. And about that time, the instructor who was teaching interdisciplinary humanities decided to retire. And so I thought, well, do I want to stay on track and be an administrator, or would I rather think about what's on the mind of the board member or what's on the mind of Aristotle? And Aristotle and Rembrandt and Shakespeare won. So I sort of reassigned myself to that job, and a year or two later I picked up directorship of the honors program, which I had something to do with starting it from the administrative side.
How did that get going?
That was Jim Pence. He was an English instructor who really came up with this idea, and it was an idea that I thought was just dead on, and so I kind of climbed on his bandwagon and tried to help him make it happen. The idea was that in a community college, it's a good idea to have a mix of students, and we knew, of course, there were going to be a lot of occupational students, and there were going to be a lot of developmental students, and all kinds of people. But the faculty perception was that the mix was missing really bright students. And so we started it as a summer program. Recruited some high school students, scholarshiped them, put them up in dorms, and taught some summer school classes for them, and then enriched that with some field trips and picnics and things like that, with the idea that we would then encourage them to enroll and become full-time Yavapai students after they graduated. And it was a good program, it did good things, but it didn't attract the bright high school kids. They tended to say, thank you very much, now we're going off to wherever we're going. Right. And so after 2 or 3 years, we refined it, redefined it, and we kept that goal of attracting good high school graduates. Because we really did think that you need some bright, thoughtful people in the mix, and I think it's worked out that way. I've been really happy with what the program's been able to achieve. But after a few years, there was a kind of an equity concern. Why are we doing this only for high school graduates? What about the returning student, the reentry student, the student who came here on his own or her own and is doing very well, and why should they be denied? So we opened it up a little farther, and then, well, what about the re-campus students? And so, we sweep some of those folks into the fold, and we turned what had been a summer field trip experience into a spring break, more extended experience. And we went usually to Los Angeles or San Francisco or maybe San Diego, and did plays and concerts and museums and things like that. I thought about Washington, D.C. and New York, and then I started getting scared. And fortunately, the people who took over the program after I left were braver than I, and so you get Europe and some really neat things.
And this year we got New York.
And you got New York this year, did you? Great,
yeah.
That's great. But that's kind of how it came about. I did that for 10 years or so. I was doing it when I retired in '94.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else have you done while you've been here? What have those jobs involved in terms of? I mean, when you were administrative, what did you see then?
I'll try not to theorize too much. Well, let me put it in terms of an anecdote. My first or second year here, there was a newly formed organization of chief academic officers, usually deans or vice presidents, and registrars of all the community colleges and universities in Arizona. Mm-hmm. They called it Higher Education Coordinating Council, HEC. And it was really the first articulation group in the state. College presidents had no forum for talking to each other. Board members didn't have any forum for talking to each other. Students, financial aid people, there was just no line of communication. And this group was originally formed to concern itself with transfer credits, to try to make sure that that was as smooth as possible. And they had just succeeded in publishing a document they called the Course Equivalency Guide. And it purported to list all the courses at all the community colleges and universities and show what they were equivalent to. Theoretically, if a student is planning to transfer, why, he can take English 101 at Yavapai and know that it's equivalent to whatever it's equivalent to at ASU or NAU or U of A, or Phoenix College, for that matter. And as long as you're talking about English 101, that works real well.
Right.
But when you get to courses that maybe have different names, different numbers, slightly different content, things get a little more sticky. And the university faculties tend to be pretty jealous of transfer credit. They're not quite sure what's going on off there in Cottonwood, Arizona. What are these people doing in Yuma? They purport to be teaching this class, but how do we know what they're really getting? And they didn't like the notion of any guaranteed equivalency. But the registrars and deans of instruction had hammered together a kind of a tenuous consensus.
The people who actually deal directly with
That's right.
wringing their hair.
That's right. And of course there were all kinds of horror stories
Right.
about the student who tries to transfer, a perfectly good credit and somebody won't take it. And there were complaints to legislators about that. Hey, we're paying for English 101 for this student at Yavapai College. Why don't we have to pay again when he takes it over at ASU? Taxpayers not going to stand for that. And so there was, there was some leverage. But I remember walking into a meeting where there was a professor from NAU who was insisting, he was the NAU's representative, that this is information only. It is not binding. Universities are not bound by anything. And someone asked him, I guess it was I. I asked him, well, what are you going to do if one of my students comes to NAU and he's taken my class in American literature? And he said, we'd probably accept it. I'd probably want to sit him down and just ask him a few questions. And as long as he had a pretty good understanding, and I thought that he had mastered a good bit of what we would be teaching in American Lit at NAU, I'd probably count the credit. And I remember exploding. I said, "The hell you will!" and we went on from there, and other people intervened. But the real question is that equivalency guide binding or not? Does the receiving institution, what rights does it have to sit in judgment on the credits that are being transferred? Part of that was that I both as a faculty member and an administrator, I was really concerned at getting students everything that was due. Right. But the other side of that coin is coming home and making sure that the product that the student was taking to wherever he wanted to take was a really good product. And I always had a kind of a mission. It bothers me a whole lot to hear community colleges referred to or thought of as the college of last resort. Can't get into a good school, you can always go to community college. Can't find anything else to do, go to the community college. And as if that's where you go to mark time, and the people who go there are the ones who can't do anything else. And that applies to faculty as well as students. What are you teaching at community college for? You're a bright guy. You could make it in the university. Well, I'm in a community college because I chose that. I really did. I had some other options, but I wanted to teach, and that was a choice. And I wanted to teach students who if they were going to make it in life, they were going to make it on merit. And that tends to be the community college student. They tend not to have, what are they called, heritage rights at the prestige schools where you go because your family has always gone there and they endowed a building and things like this. And it's always been a kind of a mission of mine that if anything second rate is going to happen at my college, it's going to be over my dead body. I believe in quality, and I think that the worst thing you can do to a community college student is the prejudice of diminished expectations. We're just a community college, so in terms of our expectations and standards, now if we were a real college, here's what we'd be doing. Oh, no, we're a real college. And
I think you've succeeded.
I think so.
There's the small class sizes are wonderful.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm in the nursing program. I've got quite a few classmates who have bachelors already.
Is that right?
From four-year schools all over the place. I have a classmate, one of my friends in my program has a bachelor's in neuropharmacology or something.
Oh my goodness.
UC Santa Barbara, but he's here because the nursing program has a very good reputation.
That's exactly
it's
that.
a good program, it's a good school, and he wants to go into that profession, so he's here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's and there are a whole lot of other people who are on that same mission, which I think is what makes Yavapai what it is today. And yes, that's just great. That's after I retired, I taught NAU extension classes for a while, and during breaks and before and after class, students would stand around, and they're swapping stories. And I generally tried not to say very much and, just listen and see what's going on. But a lot of what was going on was comparing what are we getting from Yavapai, what are we getting from NAU, what did we get from some other place we went to. And in those kinds of conversations, Yavapai tended to come up real strong. I've got another story about that. After I left administration, I went back to teaching. I was walking across the campus one day. It was in fall. It was about the time of student orientation. And when I was a vice president, through HEC largely, I got to know all the academic officers and registrars and a lot of the college presidents around the state. So that was when I thought I wanted to be a president, so I was networking. and I was walking across the campus, and I bumped into an old friend who was the president of another community college in Arizona. And I said, "Hi, what you doing? What brings you here?" And I thought he was probably here for some kind of meeting. And he looked a little shamefaced. He said, I really need for you not to make this public. He said, but I'm here because I'm enrolling my daughter. And he said, no, I'm not going to sell out my own school and my faculty and my college, but when it comes to your own daughter, you want her to go someplace where you're really sure she's going to get the real deal. And I thought that was about the best compliment I had ever heard. So I'm really glad to hear that it is what it is, and I think the honors program had something to do with it. I think a focus on good students and good faculty and high standards and finding good ways to meet those standards. You can talk about setting high standards, but that doesn't do you any good unless
you can actually get people.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I've really felt good about Yavapai being able to do that.
Cool.
I don't want to wander too far afield into the politics of higher education in Arizona, but as I mentioned before, university faculty tend to be pretty sensitive about incoming transfer students for some ideological reasons. They're not sure that these are well-educated people, and for some very practical reasons. If you take a class at Yavapai, that means you're not going to take it at the university. And that's enrollments, and enrollments mean job security and budget, and so one of the things we observed was what I called upper division creep. If Yavapai is teaching a course in such and such, and the university faculty gets worried about that, well, they're all going to take it at the community college. And this can happen particularly in a place like Maricopa County, where you really can go to a community college and you've got a choice. You can take your gen ed.
There's both in the same place.
That's right. And it's cheaper one place than the other. So how do you protect your turf? If you're a university faculty, you renumber the class. You make it a junior level class, and obviously no sophomore level class is equivalent to a junior level class. And so you can go ahead and take that sophomore class at Yavapai or Glendale or wherever, but when you come here, you're going to have to take that junior level class or senior level or something like that. And of course, we'll justify that by rearranging the content. And so upper division creep was one of the things we were struggling with. Our tool, the HECS tool, Higher Education Coordinating Council tool, was this course equivalency guide. And as I said, if you're talking about English 101 or college algebra, it's pretty much across the board. Everybody's doing that. What do you do with a nursing student whose curriculum may not look exactly like the nursing curriculum at a university, or the first fix for that was to say, okay, we're not talking. The course equivalency guide is not going to talk about occupational programs. Those are by definition all standalone. We're not going to worry about accounting classes. We're not going to worry about automotive technology or agribusiness or nursing or any of that stuff.
Because a lot of those have their own, a lot of those require licensure once you get
That's right.
So everything is basically just
Right.
based off of what gets you to that licensure. So it can be fairly clear-cut within itself.
Sure. But that leaves gen ed.
Right.
And the sequence of courses that I was teaching, Humanities, 1 and 2, when I inherited them, they were 2 4-credit courses, one for first semester, one for second semester. And when originally conceived, I guess at the University of Arizona, this was to serve the function that now is served, I guess, by the capstone classes. This is the place where every student who graduates from U of A, if he ever meets up with any other student from U of A and they're looking for something to talk about, they can talk about arts and ideas because they all took that class. This is the common experience of everyone. And arts and ideas of Western man was served that purpose at Yavapai when I took it over. Problem is that at the 3 state universities, this sequence of 2 4-credit classes had undergone gen ed reform. And at one of them, it morphed itself into three credit classes. At another, it was 2 3-credit classes. And one of them kept the 4 and 4 pattern, but changed the content. So where are my classes going to transfer? They're not equivalent anyplace. And that doesn't seem right. So what are we going to do about that? For years, the answer was give the student somebody's name and phone number when he goes to whatever university. Tell him, call this person, he'll fix it for you. Well, that's no way to do business. That's that's sort of old boy politics, and so that bothered me a lot. But
toying with people's futures.
Oh yeah, and
if this guy likes you,
that's right. That's right. Doesn't matter what you know; it's who you know.
Show up with a cake.
Yeah. So I was rather proud. Ken Meyer, who taught, he was a liberal arts division chair, and he taught history, and he was acting chief academic officer for a few years. He's now in California as a vice president at a community college there. But he and I hatched this idea that said, what we need is something better than equivalency, a better idea. And the better idea takes form from, say something like the science requirement for a degree. And in a very specific, concentrated area like nursing, you better not take geology for your science requirement. I mean, you know what you've got to do. But for a lot of students, they just need a science credit, and it can be geology or biology, it can be botany, zoology, chemistry. Just need a science credit. Well, if you can meet the science requirement from any of those areas, what's the purpose of the science requirement? Why do we want to do that? And the answer, of course, is that as far as Gen Ed is concerned, not as far as the major is concerned, as far as Gen Ed is concerned, we think there are values that you learn in a lab class. And we could list what some of those are. And we don't care whether you achieve those values with geology or botany. It's the values that count. And our idea was, why not apply that to the whole Gen Ed curriculum? Why worry about...
That's a good example of things that are clearly not equivalent.
That's really right.
Something there.
There's something in common, and that's true for social sciences. It's really true for everything in Gen Ed. And so our idea was, let's quit worrying about whether my 4-credit humanities class is equivalent or not. It's humanities, for goodness sake. And it pursues the values of humanities. And as long as it pursues those values, it ought to be transferable for humanities credit. And that became the foundation, that kind of thinking. We sold it first to a bunch of humanities teachers who then forwarded it on up the line to some chief academic officers and registrars. And it became the foundation for the transfer compacts that exist now. And I feel proud of that. It took a lot of negotiating, a lot of politicking, a lot of empires being fortified and crumbling walls and being rebuilt, and egos involved, and a lot of irrelevant nastiness. But conceptually, that's what underlies the transfer compacts that now guarantee the transfer of credits. And it all hatched in a college station wagon between here and Phoenix one day when Ken Meyer and I were...
Between here and Phoenix, how appropriate.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. It sounds like one of your more unique experiences is having gotten your hands deep into both the administrative and the teaching end of things.
It was just great.
Sometimes politically, those are kind of two distinct groups that are butting heads now and then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This may not come up in some of the oral histories that are being taken. When I arrived in '72, the college had a new president. His name was Cal James, and he's kind of the forgotten president in the history of Yavapai College. If you look through archives, the people who were here a long time, Doreen Daly and Paul Walker and Joe Rousseau's name will crop up because they had a presidential tenure on the order of 10 years or so. And they left a mark. The founding president only lasted a couple years, and people have tended to forget his name. And his successor was only here for a couple years, and people tend to forget who that was. But his name was Cal James. He was from NAU. He taught, what's it called? I want to say vocational education, but that isn't quite right. He trained teachers of in occupational areas. And Yavapai at the time was interested in emphasizing occupational things. And so they hired Cal James to do it. He lasted 2 years and he went back to NAU. He decided he'd just rather be there than here. But what he brought with him was a model of governance, a concept of how decisions are going to get made at a community college. And it was a university kind of model. He came from NAU. He had some ideas about what frustrated him at NAU, and he was going to fix them here. And so he was very receptive to what we used to call shared governance, in which the faculty had a lot of influence. And that tends to be the case at most universities, certainly most private universities. It's the origin of higher education. The first universities really were communities of faculty.
Right.
They didn't get started by hiring a president.
Mm-hmm.
They got together. The first administrator they hired was a treasurer.
They got a president when the teachers got sick of doing that stuff.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's yeah. It was the notion of who's in charge. Well, it was very clear who's in charge. These are scholars.
Right.
It's and a lot of colleges are like that. A competing model is sort of the private sector model that says that there's a boss and he hires people and as long as it's a small organization, he can do everything himself. You think of a small business person, an entrepreneur, mom and pop business. They can do everything themselves, hands-on. But as they get bigger, they have to hire people who become extensions of them. But the idea that these extensions are independent and they make decisions, no. The boss is the boss. The boss may be right, the boss may be wrong, but the boss is always the boss. And so you've got these two competing models. One's a bottoms up and one's a top down. And they collided at Yavapai College. And Cal James and some faculty members who very much shared his ideas worked out a governance system in which the faculty had a lot of influence. He left after a couple of years. His successor, Joe Rousseau, whom I worked for, said, if I had my druthers, I would be an arbitrary son of a bitch. But as long as this shared governance is producing good results, hey, let's go with it. And so we did. And it was a lot of fun. It meant that there was a lot of conflict at a pretty low level in the organization. There were a lot of committees where ideas got hammered out, and in those committees, you know, and I was on all of them. As the chief academic officer, I sat on probably 8 or 10 standing committees, and we'd fight and we'd argue, but that's where the fighting took place. And once we reached agreement, it was a pretty well wrung out idea, and I would sell it on up the line, and faculty members would sell it on out into the faculty, and gee, they were good ideas. We came up with a lot of neat stuff. Gen Ed reform being one of them. But at the end of Joe Russo's tenure, there began to be, well, nationally this is the case. There's a lot more emphasis now on decision makers making decisions. And
when was that?
He retired in about 83, 84. And the mood, my sense, and I don't claim to be really on top of this in any detailed way, but my sense of the mood of the taxpayers is that they want to hold a president accountable for what happens in the college. And they don't want him hiding behind committees and consensus. They want him they want to tell him what to do, and they want him to delegate it and get it done. That model at Yavapai College, that's the model that the Yavapai's board and administration says they subscribe to. They call it policy governance. If you go to board meetings, you probably hear them talk about policy governance. And that's the essence of it. It says the college belongs to its owners. The owners make the decisions. The way they do that is they elect board members. Owners are the taxpayers. They elect the board members. The board members tell the president what to do, and the president farms out, delegates, subdelegates, and gets it done. I think that's the dominant model for community colleges and in many four-year schools. I don't like it. In the first place, it's, boy, am I rambling. Okay. In the first place, it's based on a wrong assumption about who owns the college. Because when your average student age is, how high is it now at Yavapai? 30-something?
I just turned 26,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm one of the youngsters, at least in the nursing program.
Yeah, yeah. To make a distinction between the student and the taxpayer, not at a community college. The taxpayers are the students, and for goodness sake, look at all the retirees taking classes. And, you know, so in the first place, it's that dichotomy between the people who own the college and the students who don't own it. In a community college, that's wrong. In addition to tuition and fees, a lot of the students are tax-paying people, whether it's property taxes or other kinds of taxes. In the second place, even if that were not true, it's a very useful fiction to say, as we used to say, that what comes first is the student. Under policy governance, what comes first is the community. The community college is here to serve the community. And very often, that's not much different from saying the community college is here to serve the student. Because you can do both. And a nursing program is probably a pretty good example. Students want jobs as nurses. The community needs nurses. You run a good nursing program, you serve the need of the student, and you serve the need of the community. And it works. And so you don't worry about why it works. Is it because we're here for the community or the student? Well, there's no particular conflict there, but sometimes there is. What if the student wants to be an MD instead of a nurse? What if the student aspires to goals for which a bachelor's or a master's or a doctorate is necessary? How well are we meeting the need of that student? Well, let me now that I think that well.
I'm curious.
Okay, well, more theory. There was in the 70s a Harvard professor whose name I don't remember, who wrote some books and made some speeches, and I attended a conference and I heard him talk and I read his books. And he was proposing a Marxist way of looking at community colleges. I don't know if he used the word proletariat or not, but it's what he was talking about. And he said that community colleges are the tool of the capitalist class, and they're an instrument for keeping down and manipulating the proletariat. And while the capitalist class is sending its sons and daughters, mostly sons, to elite colleges so that they can then become a part of the power elite. They network, they join Skull and Bones at Yale and become presidents of the United States. They become cabinet members, heads of corporations, presidents of this and that, and they sit on corporate boards, and that's what the capitalists do. And the entry point for that world is the prestige college and university. And that doesn't mean a state university. That means the prestige university, the Ivy Leagues and the Stanfords and Berkeleys and places like that. Well, how do you make sure that the proletariat doesn't break into that world? Well, you cool them out. You give them a place to go. You give them the illusion of success. You get them to aspire to, he didn't use this number, but today it would be, you get them to aspire to a $40,000 salary, so that they're not going to, no matter how bright they are, they get cooled out. Their ambitions get cooled out. They enter a world of diminished expectations, and that's how you're going to develop this pool of well-trained workers who are going to be more or less satisfied with proletarian wages and whose ambitions will tend to be $50,000 instead of $40,000. But they are alienated completely from the elite. The sons and daughters of the elite are insulated. Well, that became part of my crusade. You may send your sons and daughters someplace to get a really good course in arts and ideas, but it's not going to be any better than you're going to get at Yavapai College, and I'm going to see to that. In my view, policy governance. Now, at the time when I heard that speech, the first time, hair just went up the back of my neck. What do you mean, talking about the community college as an instrument of the capitalist class? I mean, this is the instrument of upward mobility, if it's anything. And the more I thought about it, by golly, maybe the guy's got a point. And so I'm going to make it my cause to provide my students and the students at Yavapai College as well as I can, whatever it's going to take to compete in any environment where they want to go. And if they want to go for a bachelor's or a master's or whatever, or if they don't need another degree, they got some other ideas and ways to become influential if they want to be, I want them to do it. Not that they need to. What I really want is for people to have choices. And in this particular model, the community college cools you out, takes away even your...
This governance model?
Yeah. I think that policy governance tends to do that. If you phrase it in Marxist terms, well, I guess I'm glad I'm talking to a nursing student. Whose interest is it in to have a very large pool of very well-trained nurses in Yavapai County, Arizona? If that goal were achieved, what would happen to the wages of those people? If there were a very large,
I've worked previously as a massage therapist up in the Northwest where there are way too many massage therapists.
There you go.
Exactly where you're going with that.
There you go. There you go. Now, that's not likely to happen in the nursing profession. That's we're a long, long way from that.
And most of the nurses probably wouldn't mind if it did.
That's right. That's right. Compare that with the series that's been running in the Courier this last week or so about shortage of MDs. What's happened is that there is a shortage. People come into Prescott can't get doctors. They want a primary care physician, and they hunt around, and they just can't find them. And I don't want to say that the Marxist spin on that would be, well, of course, it's a plot. How are you going to keep wages of this professional class high? Make sure there are very few of them. How do you do that? American Medical Association. Don't accredit very many of those. Don't accredit too many medical schools. Now, that's not what's happened. But that would be the Marxist spin. And for me, that's far from the whole story. And it's a distortion of reality, but it's got that much truth. And as we were talking about a while ago, I think that one of the things I like about Yavapai College is, that it does equip people to make different choices. Doesn't say there's anything wrong with doing whatever you want to do. But if you want to do something different, you're equipped to do it, and you know that the option is there. I remember one time we were talking about offering, among other things, I was responsible for extension classes. And we were talking about, well, what kinds of classes would we put in extension locations? What about Seligman, Ash Fork, Black Canyon City? And somebody said, well, maybe some secretarial classes in Seligman, things like that. And one of the people in the room said, where would a student in Seligman, where would a person in Seligman have any idea what a secretary does? Where would you find secretaries in Seligman? Yeah? And there aren't any. The person growing up in for the person growing up in Seligman, secretary isn't a realistic career choice. It's just not, it is. They know there are such things as secretaries, but they don't know any. And
it might not be a good choice for somebody who's really hoping to stay there.
That's right. That's really so.
The focus.
That's right.
The satellite school that's there so that they can stay there.
That's right. That's right. And so we didn't do that. Bring me back to reality. I've been philosophizing and theorizing.
What would be the most meaningful, personally touching experience you've had with Yavapai College?
That's pretty easy. Since I was director of the honors program, that meant that I got a disproportional exposure to bright people, and very often one of them would end up as the commencement speaker. And when they talk about our experiences at Yavapai College, every once in a while somebody would throw in my name as somebody that they had particularly valued, and boy, that is as good as it gets. That is just that is so fine. It's just so fine. When I retired, I also got another award. I retired at the end of a turbulent presidency of Paul Walker. He was fired after a faculty vote of no confidence. A lot of headlines, a lot of public meetings, a lot of anger.
A lot of back and forth about who's in charge, I would guess.
Well, yes, that's really right. That was a big part of it. And when the dust had settled, Paul was fired. One board member retired on advice of his physician. He said his heart couldn't take this anymore. One left because it was bad for business. Too many people were too angry, and it was hurting his income. One of them was forcibly removed by a lawsuit. The president was gone, and a faculty vote of no confidence touched it all off. A lot of other things erupted in the community after that. But Jim filled to overflowing with angry people at board meetings, read headlines in the Courier. It was a nasty, nasty thing.
So that was in 94?
That was in 94, yes. 93, I was in 93. My role, when I left administration, I went back to faculty. I said I will do my duty. I will serve on a couple of committees, but I will not chair a committee, and I will not sit on faculty senate, and I will not serve as an officer of the faculty association. Because if I wanted to be political, I would have stayed in a place where I could have been successfully political and had a lot more influence. So I'm not going to do that. Well, in 93, the vice president of the faculty association turned up with an announcement. His doctor told him he couldn't do that, and he'd have to be replaced. And somebody nominated me, and I thought, oh, shoot, the vice president doesn't do anything. All right, what the heck, I'll do it. Well, in January of 93, as a complete surprise to me, one of the junior faculty members said, I move we have a vote of no confidence in the president. And that touched it all off. The president of the faculty association, soon thereafter, called me and said, I just had a session with the president of the college, and it's all yours. and so I was.
Yeah, vice president.
Doesn't do anything. So I was pretty high profile in all that, and a lot of people involved doing a lot of things, but. At the end of the year, he was gone, and there had been a lot of turnover on the board. And in effect, the faculty had won. They'd expressed their no confidence vote, and they, in effect, got their way. But there's a price to be paid. It's the new board was concerned that the faculty would think they had gotten their way. And so we need to reassert who's in control here. And so one of the ways of doing it was to deny emeritus status to certain faculty members, me being one of them. Emeritus status it's honorary, and it doesn't mean anything except it goes after your name in the college catalog, and retired faculty are pretty frequently recognized that way. Well, they were not going to recognize Hochstettler that way. And so I was not, when I retired a year later, I was not emeritized. 2 or 3 years later I was, as the sort of things calmed down. But at that commencement, the student speaker referred to me as someone who had taught them something useful and valuable. And the faculty president made a special award. They created something called the Faculty Hall of Fame. And they elected me and Marianne Bamrick and Rich Longfield. There were 3 people inducted into the Faculty Hall of Fame. Now, it lasted 1 year. There's never been another inductee. But it was their way of saying thanks. And I just treasured that. It was wonderful. Those are the best times. And faculty say thanks and students say thanks. There's just nothing better.
Cool. Well, our tape is about to run out.
Well,
we can go on if you'd like.
I think I've blathered about as much as I should.
That's exactly what they're looking for. So
okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, Zachary, it's been good.